Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back from the various breakout rooms. I had an excellent time discussing with and listening to the reflections of young women in the feminist movement and leadership breakout session. And I also am certain that the other sessions went well, and we have reports that there are some really insightful reflections from all these different breakout rooms. So we'll be moving now very quickly to hear what the young leaders in all these various sessions have discussed and what they have to say to us today. We're going to start with the facilitator for the Room for Economic Rights and Justice, Ms. Fardous Mohammed. Please note that you have 2 minutes to give your reflections. Thank you, and you have the floor now.
All right. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Am I going to use the camera? I wasn't ready to open the camera. Hello, guys. Good afternoon from my side. Thank you so much. First of all, I would like to thank the African Union and the Youth Info Office for giving us this great opportunity. It is always a pleasure to be part of such discussions, to share our thoughts and our knowledge regarding to the women rights and economic and their empowerment. In our session, we have discussed 3 main points, which was the economic justice and rights, and what are the policies that enabling women to be empowered in terms of the economic rights. We also had a very interactive and engaging participant from East Africa and Kenya, Tanzania, also Somaliland. I would like to also give thanks them for their contributions and the way they made our session great. So the point is that we discussed it was like how women can be, believe in themselves when it comes to the economic and work hard to get the rights and the level that they deserve to be. And that's the first point. The second point that we discussed was the government, the role of the government and the legislation in, for example, the parliament and other executive and branches of the government, that the role that they allow the young women and African women to be able to manage their business and their financial. So we discussed that it's very important to have a policy, also laws, just not only laws, but also to implement the laws that support women to have a strong financial capacity. We also discussed the role of the civil society and international organizations they can play in terms of the economic and justice and rights for the women. We also discussed about the and as African, what we can do ourselves as from the grassroots, from us as the African ideas, as the African people, what we can contribute to our economic justice and rights for the women. So I think
thank you very much, Fardous, for your reflections, and we believe that we can build more on this going forward. I'd like now to invite Joyce Sawadi from Bodily Autonomy and SRHR to speak on behalf of the breakout session. Joyce, you have the floor now.
All right, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Fantastic, thank you. We had an amazing deliberation in our group discussing bodily autonomy and sexual reproductive health and rights. Of the rich contributions, I'll just highlight the ones that really stood out for for the group. One, as far as creating an enabling environment is concerned, the overarching call to action was to ensure that we have more investment in actually shifting cultural mindsets, because we had the realization that in our regions, there's a lot of investment into policies that are sitting being unimplemented, and the greatest impediment is cultural practices and religion that hinder implementation. In line with that was an overarching call to action to ensure that we actually resource the progress. So investment into budgets to ensure that services are accessible for women and girls. The other thing that really stood out for our group as far as involving young women and girls in actually the Generation Equality campaign is the question of localizing the campaign. So ensuring that we are able to meaningfully engage different representations, because we recognize that women and girls are also not the same group. So there was an emphasis on ensuring we involve rural women and girls, that we involve persons with disabilities, and just looking at the different diversities and ensuring that different groups are represented and have their voices heard. What was extremely encouraging for me is just the call to action to ensure that we have more, more platforms at the grassroots level. So not just ensuring that these conversations happen at national level, but ensuring that we actually go to the different groups. The other thing that I think was quite powerful was just the call to action to ensure that we have more women and girls actually speak for themselves. That was quite powerful. So, and a call to action to ensure that we have more mentorship, access to education, and basically capacity building, so that even when it comes to policy making, we actually have the people who live these experiences involved in designing and implementing these policies. I really look forward to sharing the notes from the rapporteur, because I think there's a lot more rich conversations that came out that would really inform the process. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joyce, for those reflections. We'll now like to ask Juanita Babirie from the Feminist Action for Climate Justice breakout session to give us the reflections from that group. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Juanita here from the Feminist Action for Climate Justice. I think some of the challenges that have been aired out during the session are language barriers, especially for women in local communities. So most of the policies that are made are not in the local languages, and yet most of the things that for the climate impact people in the vulnerable communities, and then they cannot understand what's written in the documents. So that's a challenge that has been put out. Also, another challenge is limited space and non-recognition in terms of leadership roles. And yet we understand that women are key stewards of the environment. And this also is a very big challenge that is impeding the process of inclusion. So another point has been limited research and knowledge to highlight the gender gap. So we also, from the discussion, we found out that most of the young women in African countries are not aware, or there's not a lot of research in terms of gender and climate change. And this is a big challenge as well. So there's also the point, there's also the point of, there's a general thing of denialism when it comes to climate change. People are still denying the science. So like, if this is still being denied, chances are very high that no policies or actions will be taken, because the leaders that are not engaging the young women and the vulnerable groups will not actually do the things that they're supposed to do in line with climate action. So when we go to the, so this is working.
Janita, so we don't have much time. You just have 2 minutes, and you your 2 minutes are up. So can you give us like 3 concrete recommendations from the group?
Yes, so some of the concrete recommendations from the group are to empower women with knowledge and information on climate change, especially with information in regards to products and services, because they're the ones that are facing these impacts. And also with the gender working group under the UNFCCC, the big forum, to have at least 4 young women in the gender and working group to be represented. I think those are the key things that we've got from the discussion, and glad to be able to present it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Juanita. Now the next breakout room I would ask to present is the Technology and Innovation for Feminist Action, and Sotfa Daji would be giving the reflections from that group. Sotfa, you have the floor now.
Thank you very much. It was such a fruitful conversation, especially because we have taken it from 2 angles. The first angle is in terms of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And so we have realized that there are lack of representation of young people with. And from the other side, we have identified issues of online gender-based violence and the need for raising awareness on the gender digital space, as well as action, especially through the Generation Equality Forums and Action Coalition, is one to really work and involving grassroots organization, including mapping the projects that are taking in place at national and regional level, and also develop a tracking performance to see the decreasing of digital divide, but also of online gender-based violence, but also for donor and organization to develop fellowship and exchange programs to ensure of young women in science, technology, engineering and mathematics, as well as ensuring that women's rights organizations can foster their work in combating gender-based violence in the digital space.
Thank you very much, Sotfa. The next breakout session I would like to ask to give their reflections now is Feminist Movement and Leadership, and that was led by Stephanie Musho. Stephanie, you have the floor now.
Okay. Thank you very much, Chiamaka. It was a very great session. We had a lot of examples coming in from Kenya and Tanzania. And in terms of looking at the environment, to what extent the environment enables women to participate, what came out was from a legal point of view, where we have the Constitution of Kenya and the laws in Tanzania giving the right for all people to participate, including women, in politics, and Tanzania having special seats for women in parliament. We also looked at the challenges that women, young African women, face. This includes sexual harassment, verbal abuse, social constructs, looking at traditional gender roles, which is also tied to cultural tenets. We also looked at financial challenges and systemic exclusion. That's the old versus the young, and the young being told to wait their turn. In terms of responsive intervention, we got an example from a political party that increases women's participation by nominating women if they're underrepresented. That's at all levels, the parliament as well as the local assemblies in Kenya. We came up with about 6 recommendations. I'm not going to be able to go through all of them, but one concrete one that came out was waiving the fees for political membership and political nominations for women, because a lot of times it's too expensive and women opt out. So a recommendation would be to do away with those fees for membership and nominations at political party level. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Stephanie, for that and for that concrete recommendation. Now I'd like to ask Lusungu Kalanga from the Gender-Based Violence session to please give us a brief summary of what was discussed at their session. Lusungu, you have the floor now.
Thank you. We had a very rich discussion, and in terms of in the enabling environment and how it looks like right now, I think we, in our group, we acknowledge that at the regional and national levels, the policy work is beautiful. We've got beautiful policy documents, but then we moved on to challenges to say, in terms of implementation, there's no political will, and there's a lot of contradictions in the laws that end up fueling gender-based violence. And in terms of recommendations, we made a couple, actually many recommendations, but the ones that I felt stood out was number one, in terms of allocation of resources. There is need for more political will, and that political will should be shown in allocation of resources to GBV programs, and specifically women's rights organizations at the local level, because historically the women's rights movement are the ones who have been seen to be at the forefront fighting gender-based violence. Another one was on movement building, and I think it's also connected to feminist leadership and also connected to the first one in terms of allocation of resources. Movement building in terms of building up critical mass so that communities, both men and women, do recognize that violence against women and girls as gender-based violence is a problem and it needs to be tackled, and there's need for investment in it for things to change. And then the third one was meaningful participation of young women and being inclusive. And there we talked a bit about the issue of language, demystifying all these big words that we use in our programming and even at the regional levels. For example, when you invite a local person, a woman living in a rural area to go and attend all these meetings, and even this meeting, they might not be able to communicate because you're not using the language that they communicate. So demystify the processes that we are doing and the consultations that we are doing.
Right,
and I think the last one, just
sorry.
the bonus.
Yes, just
okay,
the last
fine,
one.
fine.
Summary.
That's fine. Yeah. All right. Okay. No, the last one was just to continue to engage local leaders and realize that this work should not be top down. It should start from the bottom. So continue the work that different countries, for example, Tanzania and Kenya, gave good examples of the work that they do with leadership, local leaders, because they have influence. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Lusungu. I passed by the gender-based violence session, and there seemed to be so many insightful discussions going on. So well done. Next, I'd like to call Irena Kinabo from the Youth Silencing the Gun session. So please give us a summary of what was discussed here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. On the part of the challenges, we discussed the key point is corruption. Corruption is the main issue that has led to different conflicts that has taken place in many African countries. So the first thing is that all leaders should make sure that they're fighting against corruption so as we can have a better community. And the other point about the shared experience and best practices is that it is the responsibility of every citizen in the continent to make sure that there is peace and security. And this responsibility should not only be left for the stakeholders, but also for every citizen to make sure that there is peace and security for everyone in order to bring development to both boys and women and gender equality in the society. On the part of the recommendation, we recommend that the government should make sure that they invest more in the education, especially for girls, to make sure that both girls and boys are given the opportunity to have the right to education. And also another point is that we should have strict laws to make sure that there is peace and security. Every kind of injustice or any kind of breaking of the law should be punishable, and there should be strict guidance and fines to make sure that anyone who breaks the law should be punished effectively. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Irena. And thank you to every all the facilitators, rapporteurs, and the participants in all the sessions. I can see that we had an excellent time engaging for that hour or so that we were speaking to one another. And I can see that there are concrete recommendations that we can go forward with from all these sessions. So thank you everyone once again, and well done. We would now like to call on our speaker today from for the closing plenary, Ms. Gloria Mangi from MyLead, to give us her reflections for 3 minutes. Ms. Gloria, you have the floor now.
Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, great. I would first like to extend my congratulations to my fellow young people and our mentors who are here today to underscore the envisioned place for the East African young women. I'm Gloria Mangi, a member of the Moremi Initiative of Leadership, Empowerment, and Development, or MyLead for short. In order to be able to respond with both efficiency and a high level of proficiency to the particular needs of women and girls in the current climate, it is imperative that the 7 proposed thematic areas are at the core of not just who we are, but what we do. The AU Youth Task Force has exemplified this through implementing policy recommendations that engages different youth initiatives and youth activists, and highlighting sensitive issues affecting vulnerable groups, and strategically using virtual engagements to foster awareness and stimulate discussions. Through the objectives of the consultations, FEM, foster, enable, and mobilize, speak to the core of what MyLead and the AU Youth Task Force not only stand for, but embody. I've had the pleasure of serving on both these platforms, and Moremi Initiative has fostered, enabled, and mobilized women like me to create award-winning projects such as the African Queens Project, which has served to give a voice and platform and connect African women around the world. To date, MyLead has a network of over 300 young African women who are invested in all sectors and continue to contribute to the peer-to-peer learning among young women. Finally, young women's leadership and participation in decision-making is a prerequisite for gender equality and the transformation of our continent, and should be non-negotiable. We're more than able to participate and lead. My MyLead sisters continue to shape local, national, continental, and global policies every day, including my MyLead sister from Tanzania, Jokate Mogelo, who serves as a district commissioner in Dar es Salaam, my MyLead sister from Niger, Halimatu Hima, who's heading some of the most complicated global issues at the Security Council at the UN in New York. And finally, my MyLead sister, the phenomenal Aya Chebi, who continues to demonstrate strong leadership on a continental level. So we call for greater investment and intentional support for young women leadership, including through mentorship. And as young women, let's start holding the hands of the younger girls. Mentor at least one girl in your community. I'd also like to remind us that the ideas we have discussed will be met with the challenges of governance that are unique to all of the East African countries and the continent as well. However, I call upon us to not despair, but to continue to be the sowers and advocates for the needs of women and girls in the new normal of COVID-19 and those that are entrenched in violent environments. From MyLead, it has been a pleasure to partner with the AU Youth Task Force and the other like-minded institutions in synchronizing our efforts towards sustainable women's empowerment. Thank you everyone for your continued commitment. And thank you, Chiamaka, for always just being who you are.
Thank you very much, Gloria, and thank you to everyone. And she has made some very inspiring statements today. We are young women now. There were generations before us, and there are generations coming after us. And it is our duty and a responsibility to pass on the torch of greatness and excellence that many of us have shown that have made us get to where we are today. So thank you once again for those inspiring statements. We have now come to the end of the East Africa Beijing +25 Youth Baraza. I want to first of all thank all of you participants who came here today. This wouldn't be possible without you, and because of you, we are able to build forward actions and recommendations to move forward the agenda of young women on the continent. I would like to thank Moremi Initiative for Women's Leadership in Africa, my lead, and the African members of the Beijing +25 Youth Task Force mobilization, who co-led this process and got us all the technical support, facilitators, and rapporteurs that we needed to make this day a success. I would also like to thank the Women, Gender and Development Directorate, Children Investment Fund Foundation, as well as There Is No Limit Fund Foundation, who have co-led and supported this event. Would also like to thank the members of the Steering Committee on Africa Young Women Beijing +25 Regional Consultations, the Aulin Young Women Leaders Caucus, GMAC Youth Network, the Pan-African Women Organization Youth Desk. Thank you to all of them for tirelessly leading on this project. I'd like to thank my amazing facilitators and rapporteurs from my lead, Kitese and Kanza Program, CIRAD Initiative, Akilidada, Girls for Climate, East African Community Youth Ambassadors Platform, Crown the Woman South Sudan, who all made the various breakout rooms engaging and very interesting for all of us to partake of. I would also like to thank our interpreters, Mubarak and Andre, who always work with us to deliver an excellent conference and event with their interpretations. And then finally to our producer, Liang from GPE, thank you for being so wonderful and making this work even at such short notice and with the limited tools that we have. I would like to thank the project manager for this, Ms. Sotfa Daji. She hasn't been sleeping. She has been working tirelessly for the past few weeks to make this possible. And to the members of the Office of the Youth Envoy, who supported in various breakout rooms, Amina, Ragda, David, Elvis, Cindy, for their support and leadership. We would like to say thank you very much. As you can see, where I come from, they say it takes a village to raise a child. I have just listed out some of the members of the village who have made this possible. So thank you once again, and we look forward to seeing you at other events. This is not the end. We still have the Southern Africa Beijing +25 Youth Baraza on Friday. So please reach out to members of your network from Southern Africa to please join us on Friday. Thank you, everyone, and have a good afternoon. Bye-bye.